Is this Carolina's first ACC loss? Or do the Heels start tomahawk chopping all around the court out in Tallahassee?
You don't want none! You don't want none!
What's going on, Tar Heel Nation? It is your favorite North Carolinian, Russ the Tar Heel. And in this huddle, we're going to talk about the number 3 North Carolina Tar Heels trip to the Sunshine State to take on the 12-7, 6-2 in conference Florida State Seminoles in Tallahassee, January 27th at 2 p.m. Now, this is a battle between the top 2 teams in the Atlantic Coast Conference. And with that being said, let's actually take a look at those updated ACC rankings. And of course, as we as Tar Heel Nation know, the North Carolina Tar Heels are right there at the top, all by themselves, with an unblemished 8-0 record, baby, followed by the aforementioned Florida State Seminoles at 6-2. Then you have number 12 Puke at 5-2, followed by a 3-way tie for 4th with the team we love to hate, Fake, and UVA at 5-3. Syracuse, Miami, and Virginia Tech are 4-4. Clemson is 3-4. Pitt is 3-5. BC, Notre Dame, and Georgia Tech are 2-6. And Louisville is holding down the rear at 1-7. So with UNC and FSU being at the top of the ACC, this is a big one. Now the Florida State Seminoles are averaging 77 points per game, and they're giving up 73.3 points per game. The Heels, on the other hand, are scoring 83.5 points per game, and they're giving up 69.1 points per game. This will be North Carolina's first time this season playing an opponent for the second time, as the Heels previously beat the Florida State Seminoles in Chapel Hill back on December 2nd of last year, 78-70, behind R.J. Davis's 26 points. If you remember, Tar Heel Nation, FSU actually took a 35-29 lead in to halftime, but head coach Hubert Davis had the Heels trapping full court pressure for almost the duration of the second half, which led to a 22-0 Carolina run, and it finally put them over the top to stay, and the Heels helped secure a close win, and they started ACC play with a W. And Jamir Watkins from Florida State had 17 for the Noles, but that was a stinking dogfight from the beginning. Now, the opponents that Florida State and UNC have in common include Wake Forest, Clemson, and Syracuse. Florida State beat Wake Forest 87-82. They lost to Clemson 78-67, and then they beat Syracuse 85-69. UNC won at Clemson 65-55. They beat Syracuse 103-67, and they beat Wake Forest 85-64. Now, the Florida State Seminoles are led by head coach Leonard Hamilton, who is in his 22nd season as the head coach at Florida State. He's amassed a 438-272 record at Florida State, which is good for a .617 winning percentage. And he's 638-482 overall, as he's got previous stops at Oklahoma State and Miami. The Florida State Seminoles leading scorer is 6'7", 210-pound junior forward Jamir Watkins, who is averaging 13.9 points per game, 6.1 rebounds, and 3 assists. He's shooting 43.8% from the floor and 31.4% from behind the arc. Jamir is coming off a career high of 27 points as he helped the Noles win at Syracuse. He additionally scored those 17 points to lead the Noles in their last game against Carolina. In that game, he shot 50% from the floor and 50% from three. He also added 8 boards against the Heels. Then there's 6'11", 204-pound sophomore forward Baba Miller, who was averaging 8.1 points per game, 5.1 rebounds, and 1.5 assists. He's shooting 47.5% from the floor and 32% from three. Miller had 12 points and 4 boards in the loss to the Heels in December. Then there's 6'5", 195-pound senior guard Darren Green Jr., who is averaging 12.1 points per game, 3.2 rebounds, and 1 assist. He's shooting 41.8% from the floor and 39.7% from three. He had 12 points, 4 boards, and 1 assist against the Heels in their first meeting. Then there's 6'7", 205-pound junior guard Jaylen Warley, who was averaging 6.7 points per game, 2.6 rebounds, and 2.7 assists. He's shooting 37.3% from the field and 33.3% from three. Warley had 4 points, 1 board, and 2 assists against the Heels in December. And then there's 6'3", 185-pound junior guard Primo Spears, who is averaging 11.5 points per game, 1.7 boards, and 2.3 assists. He's shooting 35.9% from the floor and only 24% from three. He did not play in the first game against the Heels. Now, an interesting note is that Florida State had 10 players log at least 9 minutes against Syracuse, so they can kind of go about 10 deep as far as that's concerned. And now, the number 3 North Carolina Tar Heels, who are led by head coach Hubert Davis, who was in his 3rd season at his alma mater. Coach Davis has amassed a 65-26 overall record, good for a .714 win percentage at North Carolina. The North Carolina Tar Heels' leading scorer is 6', 180-pound senior guard R.J. Davis, who is averaging 21 points per game, which is tied for 14th in the country. 3.7 rebounds and 3.4 assists. He's shooting 44.5% from the floor and 41.7% from three. RJ is coming off a career high 36 points against the Wake Forest Demon Deacons and had a really good game against the Noles in their first go-around as he scored 26 points, had 3 boards, and 5 assists. RJ has been absolutely stinking lights out. Then there's 6', 180-pound freshman guard Elliot, who's averaging 7.3 points per game, 1.7 boards, and 3.5 assists. He's shooting 46.8% from the floor and only 21.1% from three. Elliot's coming off a nice game himself against the Deacs as he contributed 14 points and 3 assists with only 1 turnover. Cadeau had 7 points and 3 assists against the Noles back in December. Then there's 6'5", 195-pound senior guard Cormac Ryan, who is averaging 11.1 points per game, 3.3 rebounds, and 1.3 assists. He's shooting 38.9% from the floor and 29.3% from three. Cormac had 8 points, 6 boards, and 1 assist against the Noles in Chapel Hill. And he actually shot below 30% from the floor and from three in their first game against Florida State. It will be interesting to see how Cormac handles his second game against a long and athletic Florida State team. Then there's 6'7", 235-pound junior forward Harrison Ingram, a.k.a. Harrison Hustle. That's what I have coined him as here recently, who's averaging 12.3 points per game, 8.4 rebounds, good for 84th in the country, and he is the leading rebounder in ACC play, and a 2.5 assists per game. He's shooting 43.1% from the floor and 39.2% from three. Harrison had 11 points, 6 boards, and 2 assists in his first game against the Noles. And last but not least, the 6'11", 240-pound preseason All-American Armando Bott. Armando Bott is averaging 14.1 points per game, 10.3 rebounds, good for 10th in the entire country, and 1.4 assists. He's shooting 53.4% from the floor and 79.8% from the charity stripe. Mondo had 13 points and 13 rebounds in the Heels' first game against the Noles. And I have just got to get this out of there because I mistakenly failed to acknowledge it in the reaction for the Wake Forest win. Listen, Mondo has been playing outstanding on the defensive end of the floor, not to mention his ability to seal off the defenders as the guards are driving has led to a lot of easy buckets for guys like RJ Davis and Elliot Cadeau, especially Elliot Cadeau. So yes, Mondo has had a couple of games where he didn't score in double figures, but it's because he hasn't had to. He's still a viable option when the Heels need him to be. Trust me, when you need Armando Bott to score, you can dump it down in there and he can make some things happen. And then the Heels have about 3 guys that average at least 9 minutes of burn per game, mainly Seth Trimble, 5.5 points per game, Jalen Withers, 4.9 points per game, and Jalen Washington, 4.6 points per game. So now that we've looked at the tail of the tape, you know what time it is. It's time for Russ's 3 keys to victory. Key number 1, you got to jam up Jamir. Jamir Watkins played like an absolute stinking man up in Syracuse. As was mentioned earlier, he finished with a career high of 26 points and finished through all kinds of contact the entire night. Then he's banging threes from the perimeter. Long story short, he is a load, and Carolina needs to stay in his chest the entire night. If you can just kind of contain him, not let him get fired up with one-handed jams because this dude can stinking bend the rim, Carolina will have a good shot at outscoring the Noles. Remember, Jamir had 17 against Carolina in the first game. They need to do a better job of containing him in the second game. Key number 2, the screens and seals have to be tight. North Carolina is a much smaller team, especially in the backcourt, with RJ and Elliot listed at 6 foot. Carolina's high ball screens for RJ and the seals for Elliot Cadeau going to the bucket are going to have to be airtight to negate Carolina's height disadvantage. Both are going to have to be aggressive. That's Elliot and RJ if UNC is going to leave Tally with a W. So those high ball screens out top to get RJ free so he can either go to the bucket or set up and knock down those 3 balls. Hey, man, we got to have good screens out high with Armando and Harrison. And likewise, when Elliot drives to the bucket, just like Armando's been doing, you know, that little post up where you kind of seal and give him an unabated access to the hoop, that's what we need. That is going to be a big key, once again, if Carolina's going to leave Tallahassee with a W. And key number 3, limit FSU's second chance opportunities. Armando Bott had 13 points in the first meeting with FSU. Couple that with Harrison Ingram leading the ACC in rebounds during ACC play, and Carolina should be in good hands. The Heels need FSU to be one and done. You have to secure the basketball and limit the Noles' second chance opportunities. They are long, they're athletic, and they love to keep the ball alive. So Carolina is going to have their work cut out for them. They have got to be active on the defensive glass, box out, right, and secure the basketball. You've got to limit FSU's second chance opportunities. And that will lead us to Russ's score prediction. Now, the ESPN matchup indicator gives the North Carolina Tar Heels a 71% chance of beating the Noles in Tallahassee. And quite frankly, I am a little surprised by that number. The first game between these two was an absolute fist fight for the first 35 minutes. Hubert Davis and the Heels implemented the full court press when they were down by as much as 14, and FSU did struggle to deal with it. I am sure Coach Hamilton will have the Noles ready to attack that should it arise again. Additionally, the Heels have played 4 tough teams on the road: Boston College, Clemson, Pitt, and State. The average margin of victory in those games, 11.5 points. I think the Heels are in for another dogfight in this one, but I do believe that they come out on top in a very close basketball game. The Heels have averaged scoring 71 points per game in those 4 true road games. Only 71 points per game, Tar Heel Nation. But the good news is that they've only given up 60. The defense plays well, and the offense does just enough to get out of tally with a W in an absolute battle once again. I'm taking the Heels in a lower scoring affair, 70-65. So let me know what you think about Russ's score prediction down in the comment section, Tar Heel and Seminole Nation. Comment down in the comment section below. Am I onto something, or am I sitting down here at the edge of the bench with my bifocals and my clipboard, just happy to be around the guys? If you are a college football or college basketball fan, please like, share, subscribe to the channel. And if you're a Tar Heel, consider becoming a member of the Huddle Hooligans. It's only $5 a month, the cost of like 2 Coke Zeros and a payday, right? Every month. You'll get earlier access to some of the videos, and I'm currently looking for more opportunities to have some members-only content. Not to mention, you get to help me build this community for Tar Heels all around the world. Every little bit helps, and I appreciate everybody who's already chipped in. Shout out to my Huddle Hooligans: Carlton Van Hoy, Scott Sheff, Preston from Greensboro, Lack Ragem, Coconuts and Grits, Elijah, and Dennis. I love you guys, and I thank you so much for your continued support. It does not go unnoticed. Unfortunately, once again, there will be no live stream due to work conflictions. I'm sorry, Tar Heel Nation, but there will definitely be a reaction video later on the night of the 27th, so make sure that you check that out. To my fellow North Carolinians and my Tar Heel brothers and sisters, I love you, and I'll catch you on the next one, baby.